little about academic and cultural reintegration? Because I know that's something that you feel quite strongly about.
I do. That's my soapbox, so you may have to muzzle me. I think, people go on assignment for the first time and they may think it's going to be 2 years and then they're going to go home. And the reality is that most people, once they're out on the internationally mobile circuit, most people don't go home when they thought they were going to go home. And often that sort of quick exposure that you were going to give your kids to a school system somewhere else turns into many years of very varied education. And I think most of the parents we talk with, they may say, well, we don't really know where our child will go to university, but most of them sort of assume that they'll go back to home country for university. And that is often something that really needs planning for ahead of time. And for many families, and I think it's human nature, you're excited about what's right in front of you and the next adventure, and you have a lot of pressure on you to make it happen and make it fast and, find a school. And I think that where people sometimes run into difficulty is that they're not doing long-term planning. They're not finding out exactly, if you're going back to Australia and you're hoping to have your child go to Australian university as an Australian, what are the exact credentials that you need coming out of a US high school if you want to study law? And how are they different from what would have been expected if you'd been coming out of secondary school in Australia? And knowing that 2 years ahead of time and planning for it. Or, if you want to go to university in England and you're coming out of the US and you don't have an IB, what are the requirements of in terms of AP courses? What do you need to be able to produce in terms of AP results, SAT, ACT scores? And how many years ago should you have been planning for that? And so most corporations moving families around do not provide any kind of financial support when families repatriate. They don't provide it in education anyway. They will provide for private or international school perhaps while on assignment, but not when you go home. And my feeling is that's when a lot of families need the help because they may have burnt their bridge to their home country system without realizing it. So that's a big soapbox.
Yes, it's funny, isn't it? One of the characteristics you often see cited as being an expat necessity is flexibility, but in that people haven't really thought beyond the, oh yes, we can problem solve, but we're always doing it reactively. We're never doing it proactively. And one of the things that most of my work is about, in strange ways, but most of the stuff that I do is about building in a plan B, always having plan B, because the number of times you use it are countless. You just continually are having to.
Right. And I keep drawing on England and the US because there's so much expat traffic between those two countries, and we're very familiar with that, but it could be anywhere. You could go through all these systems and end up finishing secondary school without a diploma or a certificate from anywhere. And, we've had that of families sort of said, we started here, we ended up here, and, all of a sudden here we are, we can't get a US diploma because we don't have an American history credit, but we missed GCSEs in England, and we are neither fish nor fowl, as they say, from the education standpoint.
And let's be honest, those things are stressful. A-levels, GCSEs, as they are now, showing my age. Right. GCSEs, A-levels, SATs, ACTs. As I say those words, there will be parents in America and the UK going, rolling their eyes because they are stressful enough at the best of times, as is the college application process.
Yes.
The thought of going through it without the supporting documents and the supporting evidence, to me, is just horrific. I cannot imagine how stressful that must be.
Right. And, to go back to your original question of the challenges, sort of the pros and cons and the challenges, I will also say that, not to sound too dark about it, it's also an incredible experience for kids, to experience different school systems and to be, I think of it, some of the international schools that I have visited, where, you know, there are kids in your classroom from all over the world, and you are completely at ease by virtue of who you are, kind of learning from them, being with them, being, you know, really imbibing an international community. Not only do you have the opportunity, but you have the ability by virtue of who you've been enabled to be. And
I am laughing because that was going to be my next point. Having painted this really bleak, the good news is that it absolutely is worth it if you plan well. There are so many benefits.
Yes. And so that's it exactly. Just to sort of plan and think as you're doing it, and don't rely on your corporation who's moving you to just somehow make everything right for you at the last minute, or, you know, they're not keeping their eye on this piece of coursework in this system versus that piece of coursework there. That piece of parental responsibility should never be relegated.
Mm-hmm.